it's also a little bit rough for Mike Vrabel right about now. Or
He's
maybe
flying
not.
too.
Or maybe not, because the decision was made. This one felt a little off. And we started hearing some reports and rumblings that maybe there would be a move to move on from Mike Vrabel after this season with the Tennessee Titans. And so it was announced yesterday Mike Vrabel is done after 6 seasons with the Tennessee Titans. 54-45 is his record, 2-3 in the postseason, but he was 13-21 the last 2 years, obviously dealing with the quarterback flux, injuries, things like that. It felt like it was maybe heading in this direction. And so yesterday, Titans owner Amy Adams-Strunk spoke via the Titans website about the decision to move on from Vrabel.
It wasn't a last night or a month ago or whenever. It's just kind of been all season watching, and it was difficult, but I thought it was time to make that change. A coach's contract, you can't trade them unless they're a willing partner to that trade. So, yes, we thought about it, but at the end of the day, with league rules the way they are, it would have maybe put us back 3 weeks. And, honestly, to get the right head coach, I was just not willing to go to the back of the line and take a chance of missing out on someone we really wanted.
And that's that.
Oh, wow. She should have led off with what she finished with.
Yeah. The problem
just
is,
get to the point.
Doesn't maybe everyone potentially want your coach now?
Yeah.
Like, you just fired a guy that everyone's like, wait a second, should we fire our guy to get that guy? Like, that guy's the guy. We want that guy. But, we're okay about our guy. We're not wild about him. But,
Yeah, he does seem like one of those names to where if he's available, you start to reevaluate what you have going on, because then it changes things. And look, I know the last couple of years, and we've talked about it, haven't been ideal for the Titans, but seemingly everybody loves that dude. Like players love him. Like what he did there. There's obviously the connections to the Patriots. If they move on from Belichick, that would make a lot of sense. But if he wants to coach this year, he's going to move right to the top of everybody's list, right? I would assume. Like he's got to be one of the more attractive names out there.
yeah, he's up there, right? And I think if you compare, him to maybe some other teams that have guys that you're like, all right, how do we feel about this guy going into 2024? I mean, I'd say if you're unsure now, just go rip the Band-Aid off. This is I would say one of the better classes of, potential head coaching hires that are out there. If Vrabel's available, Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh, I just named three. You want to go through the coordinators. I mean, obviously Raheem Morris has done a hell of a job with the Rams. He'd be in that part of the conversation. If Antonio Pierce doesn't get the Raiders job, he'd be part of that conversation. I'd have to bring him in and take a look at what he's done. Ben Johnson in Detroit. I mean, you've got some legit candidates now, and there's enough openings where all these guys could find a home. But I look at it and just go, I wish they would have saw through. They had a bunch of injuries this year. I wish they would have given it one more year. I mean, you had a combination of a rookie again, right? You have Malik Willis, you had Will Levis. Both you've drafted now to kind of replace Ryan Tannehill. Give it a little more time instead of basically saying, all right, this year is just kind of a wash and the way the last 2 years have looked. It's the last 2 years have been pretty banged up. And Derrick Henry didn't look quite the same this year besides the last game of the season. So, all those things factor into the results, and I think they're making a mistake in the long run. I think they're going to regret that because they're going to interview candidates who, unless they get Bill Belichick, maybe you could say Jim Harbaugh, but outside of those two, you're going to interview everyone who doesn't have the track record he has, and maybe it's going to be, not as good of a head coach when it's all said and done.
Whatever the name will end up being, it's a name that she's already aware of, that she wants. I think she made that clear at the end. The first part, she's pretty straightforward. I mean, I don't think there's any fluff. I actually, if you're going to make the mistake 100 miles and running. I mean, that's just how it works. And so it sounds as though she said all that. What she should have said is, I say all this to say, we know who we want. We know the man that we want or woman. And whoever it is that we end up getting on this market, it's who we wanted, and that's why we made the move now, which now makes it super, super curious and interesting to see who it is that they hire. And if that was the person that they wanted, or them swinging for the fence by clearing out Vrabel to be able to bring that person in immediately, or if they end up having to I don't know, do we call it settle? I guess it would be you'd have to settle for the candidate that you had to take because you weren't able to get that first pick. But it sounds as though they have their eye on who it is that they like to have. And if that person is that good, I'm curious to see what the name is. Who is that was so good that you're like, yep, we're going to take and not take the time and give it a little bit more time to see if Vrabel can pull this all together with these, young quarterbacks and what you have going on. They think they have found or think they know who it is that can make their organization better. Like, we had a hard time watching this. Like, she says some descriptive things that I kind of felt like were, if you really, take a stab at it and you're a fan of Mike Vrabel, maybe a tad bit offensive, but it is what it is. They moved on, and they're going to have to live with the decision that they made.
I just wonder how attractive that job is, because if you look at that division, Jacksonville's a bit of a mess, but there's a lot of talent there, and it feels like, okay, make some moves, make some changes, and you at least feel better about you've got your quarterback, you would think, and you move forward looking at it going, all right, we're going to compete in this division moving forward. Houston's got a quarterback, looks like a franchise quarterback, one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and Indianapolis was on the doorsteps of going to the playoffs with a backup quarterback. And then there's Tennessee. It just feels like this is a transitional phase to where it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I don't know how moving on from Mike Vrabel makes things even that palpable in the meantime where you're trying to compete for that division title. Like, I don't know how that makes any sense. But it feels like they got a lot worse, as you pointed out. So
I felt like, too, last year where they brought in a new general manager, that's usually the sign of, hey, if things don't turn around here this year, we're most likely going to find a new head coach. And it is Rand Carthon, I believe, now is the general manager.
Yeah.
Like, typically, that's not how, they'd like to pair those two together to work together moving forward. And that was probably the tea leaf of, like, they're going to give this one more year, and depending how this year goes will ultimately determine what this is going to look like. So, like I said, I don't think Mike Vrabel will be out in the open very often unless he wants to be. Like, I think he'll have his pick of whatever he wants, and he'll have to factor that into it. And then, look, I mean, dare I say, if you're Ohio State, are you looking at Mike Vrabel now and saying, "Oh," because that's a staff that is undergoing a lot of change right now. It looks like Ryan Day is going to hand over some play calling duties. There's going to be a new OC, and there's a lot of things going on there. Is that a spot where you look at it and go, man, if Vrabel's there, phew. But would he even want to do that? I think most guys who are at the NFL level don't want any part of the college game with recruiting and NIL transfer portal. They're like, no.
Unless he's going to be the head guy.
Yeah, well, that's obviously what he'd be. But the point is I don't think he'd have any desire even then with the state of college football that it's at.
That would be interesting.
That would be interesting.